Hi, boys and girls. We are working on activity book 10.3 and chapter 14 in your reader. So please make sure you have those two things out in front of you, activity book 10.3 and your reader open to chapter 14, Augustus Caesar and the Roman Empire. So this is supposed to be a little bingo game that you're supposed to do with your classmates, but since you guys are all at home by yourselves, we're going to do it a little bit differently. On your paper, you see initials here. I want you to cross that off and write the page numbers that I've given you for each of the items. Pause the video if you need to and write down all of the page numbers. As I am reading the chapter to you, you are going to listen for the answers to these questions. So, for example, when we start reading, the first question you're going to be listening to find the answer to is this first one. Who was Octavian's ally but later became his enemy? So you're going to be listening for that question as I begin to read pages 116 and 117. Chapter 14, Augustus Caesar and the Roman Empire. During his life, Julius Caesar had a few close friends, the closest of which was Mark Antony. Mark Antony was a general under Julius Caesar and helped in the conquering of Gaul. Julius Caesar did not have any sons that could take over his position as emperor of Rome. In his will, Julius Caesar adopted his 18-year-old great-nephew Octavian as his own son. After Caesar's death, Mark Antony and Octavian worked together to fight against Julius Caesar's enemies and resolve some of the conflict in the empire, at least for a while. Mark Antony took it upon himself to make sure Rome and Egypt continued to be allies, friends, because Rome needed to keep importing Egypt's wheat. Plus, Cleopatra's Egypt was a rich and powerful country with a strong army. Not as powerful as Rome, but still an important force in the Mediterranean area with which to have an alliance. Just as Julius Caesar had done, Mark Antony fell in love with Cleopatra and she fell in love with him. In fact, they became one of the most famous couples in history. William Shakespeare, the playwright you heard about earlier who wrote the play Julius Caesar, wrote a play about this couple entitled Antony and Cleopatra. Mark Antony and Cleopatra became allies, friends, in a struggle for power with Octavian. Even though Mark Antony and Octavian had worked together in an alliance to end Rome's civil war, they eventually became enemies. So in that first box, who was Octavian's ally, his friend, but later became his enemy? It's at the bottom of page 117. Now, on page 118, we are listening for this question, and this question, and this question, three of them. So against whom did Octavian win a war? What award did Augustus Caesar receive for his bravery? And how did Augustus Caesar receive part of the same name as Julius Caesar? Maybe you already know that from the first page I read. Octavian won the war against Mark Antony and Cleopatra. He went on to become so right there's the answer to one of your questions. He went on to become the most powerful Roman leader at a time with influence over most of the senators and generals. Octavian served as consul, proconsul, and in a number of other important roles, becoming a true Roman war hero just like his predecessor, Julius Caesar. Octavian managed to make more friends than enemies, unlike Julius Caesar. He was so popular and powerful that the Senate gave him a new name, Augustus, which in Latin means illustrious one. Augustus Caesar was presented the same award as his predecessor for his bravery, the civic crown. Today, Augustus is remembered as Emperor Augustus Caesar. He took the name Caesar in honor of Julius Caesar, his predecessor and adoptive father. So there are the answers to 3 questions on your bingo card. Moving on now. Now we are looking for an answer to the question, why was Augustus Caesar the most powerful man in Rome? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm skipping a page. We're not ready for that yet, boys and girls. We need to do 119 first. So we're going to be listening for, under Augustus Caesar, what was the new form of government? Here we go. Augustus Caesar was considered the first Roman emperor, which means he had a lot of power and influence over Roman politics. Under his leadership, Rome was no longer called the Roman Republic. Instead, from the time of Emperor Augustus Caesar onward, it would be called the Roman Empire. Whether he was called a consul, dictator, king, or emperor did not matter. The fact was that Augustus Caesar was the most powerful man in Rome. Many soldiers and generals throughout most of Rome's provinces were loyal to Augustus Caesar. So you can answer your question now, this one, under what was the new form of government. And we're also listening for, why was Augustus Caesar the most powerful man in Rome? I'm going to continue reading on page 120 to see if you can figure it out. They respected him and would do anything for him. This alone gave Augustus Caesar great power. He was also incredibly rich, and he had the power to make other people incredibly rich if they would do what he wanted them to do. Under the Roman Empire, the basic structure of government was similar to the structure of the Roman Republic. There was a Senate with 2 consuls, as well as proconsuls, or governors, and many of the same laws. The emperor of the Roman Empire was most powerful. So now we're going to be listening. I need to go back and read a little bit, but we're going to be listening for the answers to these questions, and I'm going to help you answer some of them. So how did Pax Romana change the Roman way of life? What does the Latin term Pax Romana mean? And what did Augustus Caesar believe he had to accomplish to create the Pax Romana? During his first, and I am on page 120, and we're going to be going on to 121. During his first several years as emperor, Augustus Caesar worked to make Rome's borders and provinces secure and safe from attack. The Roman Empire was huge, stretching over thousands of miles, including large cities, vast forests, mighty mountains, and parched deserts. The land of Gaul had been conquered, but there were still tribes in the deep forest determined to fight the Romans that called them barbarians. To the north of Gaul, there were countless other Germanic tribes that were angry and nervous that Rome would try to take their land next. In the Alps, just north of Italy, there were still many ancient tribes unwilling to submit to Roman rule. There were also enemies in Spain and throughout various parts of Africa and Western Asia. Individually, none of these enemies were a real threat to Roman power, but all together they posed a real problem. It seemed as though the wars and fighting would never end. Augustus Caesar wanted to put an end to the continuous warfare once and for all. He spent more than 20 years fighting these enemies of Rome and expanded Roman territory to reduce the amount of surrounding threats. Thus began an important 200-year period in Roman history known as the Pax Romana, which means Roman peace in Latin. In truth, things weren't entirely peaceful. Roman armies still had to do some fighting here and there, but there were no serious threats to Roman power. Augustus Caesar preferred to win wars without fighting at all, and many enemies surrendered to Roman rule rather than face Roman legions in battle. The mere thought of fighting the Romans was enough to make most kings shudder with fear. Wherever they conquered, the Romans built their roads, bridges, temples, aqueducts, and fortresses. Wherever they went, the Romans also brought their language, laws, money, and arts. Augustus Caesar loved art, and he knew how important it was to all Romans. He paid artists to create some of the finest and most beautiful sculptures, mosaics, frescoes, and temples. There are fewer frescoes today because they have not held up as well as mosaics and sculptures over time. Frescoes and other art from ancient Rome show us that Romans were talented artists. Ancient Roman art provides important clues about daily Roman life. Augustus Caesar convinced Romans that peace was better than war. This idea was difficult for many Romans to accept at first, because they were used to constant warfare and expansion as the way to sustain the Roman Empire. Roman boys were expected to join the army as adults and, when necessary, die in battle for Rome. Roman mothers, wives, and children expected their sons, husbands, and fathers to march away to wars, often never to return. The idea of Pax Romana was something most Romans had never even dreamed of. Over the next hundreds of years, the Roman Empire had many, many emperors, but none would ever be as powerful or as illustrious as Augustus Caesar. So let's go back to our bingo page. And I want to first answer, what does the Latin term Pax Romana mean? It means Roman peace. How did the Pax Romana change the Roman way of life? Well, there were no threats to Roman rule. So nobody was saying, we're going to overtake you. What did Augustus Caesar believe he had to accomplish to create the Pax Romana, to create Roman peace? He felt he had to conquer all lands around the empire. So, boys and girls, we did those three together. You're answering all the other ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're answering 6 of them on your own. So please do that and submit your paper on Schoology.